a lot of the laws today are out of date. They were written hundreds of years ago and allegedly still in service today with the same applicability. Well, no one really could have predicted the online world. No one could have predicted borderless nations that are porous. And what we have now is age-old laws that have really nothing to do with the online space. And yet we're referring to them in order to enforce penalties on organizations. Well, I remember investigating one case in South Korea of a Google breach that rendered them to pay $1,000 to the regulator. $1,000 when I converted from the South Korean value. And I've mentioned that in one of my location-based services papers. Google got away with tracking individual users based on their location details coming from smartphones and other Android platforms and devices, and were only fined $1,000 US. Now, I thought that was laughable, but I also thought that was a sign of the times. How can some corporation abuse users like this, take their location information, and through other jurisdictions, we saw the taking of MAC addresses as Street View cars went by neighbourhoods, collecting IP addresses and MAC addresses of individual open devices. How can they be fined $1,000 or $100,000? It's not commensurate, it's not proportional. A lot of people are now talking about soft laws. These are not legal laws and acts, so to speak, but soft laws and principles that are in place to keep organizations honest. As things change daily, as innovations come out, especially when we start to look at the emergence of autonomous systems through artificial intelligence, machine learning practices, pattern matching, big data, and a whole lot of other sensor-based technologies, and some of these sensors embedded in our devices, 14 sensors in a smartphone today, 14. There is no knowledge of the amount of data being amassed. So soft law is there to introduce an interim de facto law that keeps corporations abiding by guidelines. But again, when externalities happen, and we don't see the fines as much as, say, in the space of environmental externalities, where companies are fined $500,000 or $1 million or $500 million. We don't see that happening in the tech space, again, because I think you can't see the fallout. We can't see what's actually going on. It's not an incident or an accident. No one's been killed, no one's suffocating, no one's losing their home, so to speak. We can't see the results of a fallout in the online world. Data breach notification principles have come in place, so we can see when there is a breach and there's no disclosure that there are penalties enforced. But soft law is where we're going. We're looking at guidelines by media authorities around the world that say, when you have a location service or you're collecting these kinds of things, the principles that you should be abiding by are A, B, and C. Covert surveillance should not be occurring without a judicial warrant process. The Telecommunications Interception Act in many parts of the world needs to be abided by. But again, we have this complete ignorance and complete non-action, to date at least, of when large companies really stuff up. We do see the EU now offering great penalties and enforcing those penalties, but it's come really late in the piece, 20 years, after the birth of the internet, which is 20 years too late.